for at least 4 months is when they stop scanning. For 4 months, you have a dominance of alpha brain wavelengths, meaning like people are more, you can handle stress and anxiety better, and you're more receptive to absorbing information.
So, did you end up doing Kambo in Austin? I saw
Yeah,
Dara did it.
yeah. So we were in Dallas and we went and saw Dara. I got to go to her clinic and she had some clients that did it. And we combined it, which we haven't done before, but we combined it with, so we do combo first and then they would get IVs. So I'm not entirely sure what IVs everyone did, but I don't know if they were just doing the ozone, or if they're doing like detox, like the support with the detox, because that's important. Usually we recommend people do some type of like, cell core or zeolite or charcoal after because of all the stir up. But so, I think it was interesting to be able to do IVs after because it can also pep you up energetically if you get tired from it.
Yeah, I felt pretty good the day I did Kambo. So I'm trying to do a cross here on the podcast between like us having a discussion and explaining stuff. So if anybody doesn't know, Todd is a combo expert, and my understanding of combo, and then you can go into it a little bit, is combo is he essentially burned four different points on me with his cigarette. I'm just kidding. So
Cigar.
he has this little incense thing, and he burned four different points on my shoulder, and then he has this frog secretion, which is a frog that's found in the jungle and South America somewhere, and he puts that on. Has over 400 peptides in it, and I could be way off on this, so you'll correct me. And then it makes you feel really sick. Like, so within 10 seconds of you putting that stuff on, I felt my heart rate start to go up. So my heart rate jumped up really fast. And I thought that was the most uncomfortable part, was honestly like the first 3 to 4 minutes, because my heart rate is going, you're getting all these new sensations, like your hands start to go cold. And then the rest of you is like burning hot. And then I started to vomit at like minute 6 or 7 or something. And then once I got through that, I started to kind of come down in terms of intensity, but I still just sat there like, just waiting for the 15 minutes to be up. And so I just didn't feel good for minute like 8 through 15, but it was pretty bearable. And then the other thing that surprised me is, so like the reaction time was super fast. So like it was like 10, 15 seconds. I noticed a difference once you put it on my burn marks. And then, like within 30 seconds of you taking it off, I noticed like a big alleviation.
Yeah, you recalibrate pretty quickly from it. Most people do. Not some people. Some people purge right after too. So sometimes we can take it off because we can go deeper into this. But when we have like continuous glucose meters set up with people when doing combo, we see where the blood levels go. And for some reason, right when you take combo off, there's this last little spike that happens, and I don't understand the physiological effect, but it happens with everyone pretty much that we've done 15 people with CGMs at least. And once you take the combo off, there's a little and it goes back down, and I think sometimes that will cause people to purge one last time too. So but otherwise people, you recalibrate pretty quickly. So
Yeah.
if you want me to kind of explain there like what combo
Sure.
is. So combo is it's a secretion from a frog. The scientific name is the Biolumineus bicolor, comes from the Amazon, and it's a defense mechanism for this frog that if something like a snake or a bird come by and try to eat it, it's very fatal to them. In the 80s, it was the first white person that was able to experience combo that we're aware of. They experienced this with a tribe that they were studying down there, and it just happens to be really beneficial for humans because it has hundreds and hundreds of these bioactive peptides. There are probably like 20 or 30 that are like heavily researched that we have data for almost 40 years ago. There are more in there that just haven't really been really separated them and been able to study them. But um, what we do is we burn these thoughts. It's applied topically. So like you said, with we take a small piece of incense, and the Amazon they use literally a stick, so it's much bigger.
Yeah.
And I'm just tapping with a hot piece of incense, the very first layer of your skin off, just to open up so you have that exposure, so it can be absorbed into the lymphatic system, go into the blood system where it hits you pretty quickly.
Yeah. So, like, I don't know. I guess if anybody's watching the thing, there's where it was. You can't really see him anymore. I can see him slightly, but it didn't really hurt. It's just like a really quick sensation to actually do that little burn, which you would think it would hurt more, but it really didn't. So when was it like the first time you did it?
Probably about 4 years ago. And I was introduced to it. I mean, I was big into the biohacking stuff and always the extreme things back then, and trying different things. But Jill actually, and it's a very different path that we took, but Jill got into Kambo because she was using plant medicine. She'd been in AA for over a decade, just in and out, having kind of relapses of small things. And she wanted to find a way to actually take her power and have control back from addiction. So she started doing plant medicine. She never did plant medicine recreationally or anything like that as a kid. This was all for therapeutic levels. So she she did she started getting into plant medicine again as a therapeutic. This wasn't like, hey, let's go have fun on a Friday night. This was working with a clinician, sat you down, and it was a process. And she felt so good from the first one. She'd done psilocybin. She did like 9 grams when she weighed like 80 pounds, which is very,
Jeez.
an experience. Again, just to reiterate, this is very therapeutic clinician status. It's not, let's go have fun. And then, it was ayahuasca and then San Pedro. And she was bouncing around. And she also didn't really, which also is not recommended. Like, you need to have integration period and all this. But she was also very unhealthy. So she had Lyme disease. She was vegan and not a healthy vegan. And so she had all these issues, and she had a mentor who finally connected with her and was like, you're just all over the place. You're up in the sky with the plant medicines. You need to ground yourself and actually physically cleanse yourself and try a combo. So she did combo, and she felt so amazing after. It was so intense for her that she wanted to continue with this, and she saw a significant difference on how she felt. So I actually had met her the day after for the first time, and I was like, "What are those dots?" And she explained them to me, and her experience, which can preface, I guess, the point of why we became practitioners ourselves, was very intense and scary. Combo is so effective, the medicine itself, but like who you work with is also very important. And she just had very bad experiences with that part that made her feel very unsafe. And she wanted to change that. My experience, I'm very soft and kind of motherly with combo because I don't believe that the more extreme it is, the better results you get. I'm more on the science base of the peptides and absorbing those, but like I've just had experiences with combo where someone told me like, oh, your first session was too easy. The second one I tried to break you. And like I never ever want to be in the hands of someone who has that mindset when it comes to earth medicine, plant medicine, or animal medicine. I want to always feel safe and secure. So, there's caveats to that story, and it goes much deeper, but it's what got us into being like, we love what this does. For me, what I did combo generally, I know it's easier to say, like I'm a fairly healthy person. And I was doing combo just to experience it. I didn't have like any goals and intentions.
Yeah,
And
that
it's
was kind of like
interesting.
me.
Yeah, yeah, and which is totally fine because I went into it like, well, I'm not looking for fit. I'll find whatever I'll get out of it, physical detox. But what I got, and again, there's a lot of science that we can back up with combo, and then there's also kind of like the woo woo, emotional, spiritual aspect that we see it's there. It'd be crazy to ignore it. We just don't have the science, or the type of way to measure it yet. But For me, hands down, when I did Kambo the first time, the amount of confidence and clarity I got was just, it was nothing I'd ever experienced. And I'd been in a marriage for about 9 years at that time that I wasn't very happy in. And I kind of just, we had kids and I stayed in it for the kids mostly and said, well, this is what I'm gonna do. And Kambo made that night and day clear that I needed to. Didn't make
Really?
it easy. Yeah, it did not make it easy to get out of it, to be clear. It was just, the message was like, I'm dwindling away as a human being for my kids by staying in something, all that of course being my choice, but it made a very clear message to me of like, no, there's more to this.
How do you
And
think
then
it
just
like
doing,
gave how do you think it like changed your mindset in that respect? Like was it
yeah,
something
that's
that
a
you were
great question.
consciously
You're the first person
noticing?
to ever ask that. Yeah. So this is where I believe, and that this is the stuff where like more Jill is into the chakra points and understanding that. Now we quantify chakra points. So you can treat Kambo similar to like you would acupuncture, like by points and locations. And I had them done on my chakra, my sacral, and my solar plexus. And solar plexus is self-empowerment, confidence. And I didn't know this. This is what's pretty cool. Like I didn't know any of this. I didn't know what chakras really were at the point at the time. And so the practitioner had done like 9 dots, which is also a lot. And I'm not a fan of that much anymore, but on my solar plexus and all of that, and my sacral and root. And we see, because we use bioresonance devices, we can do before and after on your chakra point, and just your bioenergy field after Kambo. So we can see like, wow, it's pretty cool to see that where, people can question if there's energy points or if chakras are real. But we can actually see, it's like if we did Kambo on your chakra or any chakra before and after, there's going to be a big increase in that bioenergy field in that location. So it's pretty cool. But so to tag back to that, I think is like something was going on with my solar plexus, where again, it's self-confidence, self-love, it's your voice and everything that came out. And without knowing that that was even a thing, that is exactly what I experienced the first time. So we did a bunch after that and just found that we just, and not that there's anything really wrong with the practitioners, but it wasn't the way that we wanted to experience Kambo. And for sure, the way I do Kambo is very different than anyone else. I'm not a shaman. I've been trained by people. I've been trained by numerous different people, but I'm not a shaman, nor do I pretend to be. So I'm not someone who um, has the traditional Kambo ceremonies where we're beating drums or singing songs. We play music, but I'm not singing songs. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not um, having that type of experience. To me, it's just more like scientific. There's a lot of respect to the medicine, and there's still a traditional respect. But if you go to someone else, it would most likely be very different than just with the way I
Yeah.
do Kambo.
Well, and I like that because I think um I don't know, there's just a lot and I feel like I'm quite a few years behind you in this because when you say you didn't know what chakras in my mind are little balls of energy somewhere inside your body. So I don't know anything. Um and like I've always lived as though they don't exist, I guess. So I just kind of tend to ignore
Yeah.
it or like, and I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I think it's just been something that's, I don't know, you just build association. So a lot of people that I've talked to, it just feels so fringe to me and they don't use language that I understand
Yeah.
and can
Woo
relate to.
woo.
So yeah, well, maybe it's not woo woo. I don't, but like I think the language gap is what I struggle with the most. So I like that you do that because if somebody was like, "Yeah, we're gonna beat some drums and throw this frog poison on you," I would have never done it. Um, but you kind of bridge that gap to me for me a bit because you use like you're talking about the peptides and like so I'm like,
Yeah.
yeah, I know what peptides are. I'm interested in that and the benefits those give and anti-inflammation and pretty much everything, right? There's peptides that can do anything. Like you can use peptides to change the color of your skin or grow more hair or whatever you want to do.
Yeah.
Um,
Collagen is a peptide. We need to like, for some people who are wondering what peptides are if they don't know, but like collagen is a bioactive peptide, and that's what these peptides are. So we have peptides, there's peptide therapy, there's so many usages of peptides. Um,
yeah, yeah, exactly.
but
It can be used for
that's where
like
I like the
anything.
research. Yeah,
Yeah, they're
absolutely.
kind of in my mind. I kind of categorize it with like I know it's not correct from a categorical sense, but like in my head, they kind of exist in the same space as stem cells, which like they do a lot of stuff and they're really good at it. I'm sure it depends on what you're using, where you're getting it from, and all that. But yeah, anyway, you just kind of, I think you bridged that gap for me significantly, which kind of, I probably wouldn't have done it otherwise. So I like the fact that you are very open with where you're at. You're not trying to be something that you're bringing it into a new space. You're not like trying to be the shaman or something like that. And it's something that I can relate to where it's like, hey, let's talk about kind of the more scientific side of this and how it helps. I think that's kind of important.
Yeah, we also, while there is, the research has been going on since like 1984, 1986, where they were bringing the secretion back from the Amazon. There's a lot going on, but like I still we work hard and we work with other people to legitimize Kambo even at a deeper level. And, we have worked with the Peak Brain Performance Institute in Houston, where they were doing QEEG scans before and then upwards to 4 months post a Kambo ceremony. And like, this is what's really cool because, you do before and then they do Kambo and then they're testing them almost every week, every other week, depending on the person's schedule. And they show that there is a strong dominant for at least 4 months is when they stop scanning. For 4 months, you have a dominance of alpha brainwave lengths, meaning like people are more, you can handle stress and anxiety better, and you're more receptive to absorbing information. And not that I like this term, but I'll take it for a doctor's perspective. But they said Kambo is equivalent to the body as if it was a Flexerol. So like
As if it was what?
Flexerol, so like a muscle relaxer.
Oh,
I
okay.
call it so a muscle relaxer, and that goes into the peptides though, like going back, because there's peptides like you've got one that's like philo, and I do apologize because some of these you just read and you don't always hear like the proper people pronounce them, but like there's the phylolithorin, and like that's specifically the one that regulates the central nervous system. So like there's actual peptides they've shown like this is what it's doing in the body, and it goes to that. So those are things we've known for decades. But then us working with people to say, yeah, look, this is what it's doing. And that's one of the most common things we hear from people is, wow, my anxiety is pretty much, I can handle stress way better and be able to like this see clear and think clear during stressful moments. So
I think
we're working currently with a Lyme disease study. I would say one of the most effective things I have found for Lyme would be Kambo, and it's pretty rough for that, but that's what most people come to us or we go to them to do is for like Lyme and mold. But Lyme is, we've had people that have done bee venom therapy for 5+ years, and they do one session of Kambo and they'll say that that is more effective than their 5 years of bee venom therapy. But that's subjective. We don't have the science behind that. I always want to clarify with that. Like these aren't scientific, but we have multiple people who do that and they're like, yeah, this is way better.
Yeah, I mean, science is always lagging experience. So, I've done a number of videos on like the ice baths and how that helped me and with asthma and all that. And then people say things like ice baths don't do anything, or, well, you didn't have asthma. Then I'm like, yes, I did. And yes, it did. It worked for me. And I can say that because I'm not selling it. I'm not doing anything in that regard. I'm just saying, and I'm not telling anybody else it's going to get rid of their asthma or whatever. But for me, it did. So, and I feel really confident in that because it was the only life change it made during that time. But on the subject of Lyme disease, though, Charlene, who did it with me at the same time, she was just asking my experience with it. And I was like, I felt pretty good that day. I haven't noticed anything crazy, but I'm pretty healthy all around. So like, I didn't have a crazy experience. I also want to try it again when I'm at your place at the end of this month or, March or whatever. But she was saying that it was the most helpful thing that I think, I don't quote me on this, but I think she said it was the most helpful thing that I've ever done. At the very least, she was saying like, my joints have gotten creaky and achy over the years, and it like took all that away. I felt really good. Like, and she had Lyme, so I know she had a pretty drastic experience with it. She said she wants it to be one of her mainstays.
Yeah, she had reached out afterwards and had mentioned that too, and she had said, please thank Jill for poking her to do it," because Jill had been listening to her
Yeah.
conversation for the few days, and her ailments and stuff. And Jill, I will never, I will give you all the information in the world, but you will never hear me say you need to do combo. It has to be 100% your decision, in my opinion, because when you're going through that, the only person you have to get mad at is yourself. Like if you're going through combo and it's extremely uncomfortable, you can only be like, okay, I chose this. You can't curse at me or anything. But Jill, on the other hand, she's a hype man. You know, she's like, you need combo, and you know, and she's all over it. So she kind of convinced. I'll never like be like, oh yeah, you have to do it. If you want to do it, I'll give you all the information you need to make that decision. But Jill is the one who really got Charlene to do it.
Yeah, and I'm glad she did. I actually had a lot of like it was a really cool experience for me, and I want to do it again and try it out at least a couple times more and see how it goes. But yeah, I don't know. I was kind of expecting it to be way worse, to be honest. I don't know if like it's probably different between some people too, but like I didn't think it was really that bad. But my bar for how bad it was going to be probably could have been pretty high, which is a better thing to do than to say, "Oh, it's not that bad," and then you're like, "I'm dying. I am dying right now,"
Yeah,
because it
I've
is pretty
only had
uncomfortable. But
it what is, and it's also depends on other people, like everyone is a little different. And again, I am definitely more into the softer side because I'm more focused on you having it on longer and absorbing the peptides over extreme discomfort. I always tell people if you want to go through extreme discomfort, go do an ice bath or something. Like I don't see that, but like when I was trained, everyone that's ever trained me is like combo needs to be a punch in the face, and I just personally don't agree with that. And again, there's no science, but it could be. But I don't see there being a benefit with combo the more you suffer. So
yeah,
that's just not the way, I do it. But we've done over like 2,200 ceremonies, and I've only had one person say, "Hey, I'm never doing that again." And this was a special forces gentleman who thought we were doing bufo, which is a completely different experience in general. It's a psychedelic from a toad. So he wasn't prepared under any point. Like, so there was, and he had come with a group of the other special forces guys, and we were in Washington, D.C. And he wasn't ready. He literally came into the house with like, he had a gallon bag, a Ziploc bag, and he had mushrooms. And he's like, "Who's ready for bufo?" And he just wasn't prepared. And when he did it, he took it off within 2 minutes. He ripped it off and it was really intense for him, understandably. So everyone else, I think, I mean, it's really easy with an unknown thing to build it up like it's more intense. And it can be very intense. I think that who you work with matters, location matters, the points of the combo matter, is intensity. But like for me, I'm more focused on you having it on longer to absorb those peptides, that we have the data and research showing where the benefits come from that. Because
yeah,
certain ailments, I can tell you what peptide does what. Like with Charlene, it was like, okay, well, you have the bombasin peptides. Bombasin peptides are going to basically like an oil change for your whole digestive system. She was having digestive complaints of things, and like, well, think of it as an oil change where these peptides go in and stimulate your liver, your gastric acid, your pancreatic secretion, and bile all get dumped out for you to purge, and now your body creates fresh new juices. And then there's dermaceptin, which is the University of Rome and the University of Paris studied and said that dermaceptin is the strongest antiviral naturally occurring that they've ever studied.
mm,
That also, with those peptides, are anti-parasitic, antifungal, antibacterial, and antiviral. So like there's all this that we can say, like if you have an ailment, that is what, these are the benefits you'll most likely get. And again, I always preface what we have with science and what's not. And so what I see with everyone, this, we don't have science, but again, it happens every single time, is, for example, Micah, like, I just see it all the time. It's just so consistent that it's there. We just can't prove it. But like, if you had a sense of pain, I know exactly what peptides you're going to take in, and I know exactly how your combo experience is going to be. You're going to take in, and we see this with people, so that I feel combo is so smart. It really takes in, like, it gives you what you need. And they are bioactive, so your body pretty much treats them as if it's in your system synergetically. So for someone who's gone through a lot of pain, when they do combo, they're going to actually almost fall asleep. And it could, most people are like, how, if you've done combo, you're like, how is that possible,
Yeah,
really? Um,
I
and
would not fall asleep.
yeah. And so like we did a group of like 8 or 9 people this weekend in Austin. And like one guy was literally falling asleep. And I was like, oh, you have a lot of pain. And he's like, how did you know? And I'm like, well, because that's just, again, your experience, because you have this dermorphin is a peptide that is studied to be about 4,000 times stronger than morphine as a painkiller without the addiction and opioid effects. And so if you're in a lot of pain, you're going to be utilizing all of those peptides, which also have an opioid effect, which makes you tired and doze off. So it's really cool how this all gets connected. And there's a lot more that we could study and probably legitimize. But we sit all the time. So everyone can have a little bit of a different experience. Their purge can be different colors based off of what's going on. What they throw up is different. Not everyone throws up either. 99% of people purge, but not everyone. And there's no success or failure on if you purge, it'll just come out through a bowel movement a couple hours later. But sometimes you want to purge because, I guess we've kind of jumped into like the science of things, but maybe we should step in just because I'm talking about like what the experience is like. Where like, you need to, before you do combo, you need to fast for about 6 or 8 hours. This isn't like a
Right.
spiritual purpose. It's really just so you have an empty stomach, because later when you most likely will purge, you want to have an empty stomach and you don't want to have like a solid piece of steak in your stomach. So when you come
Yeah.
into a combo ceremony, you always want to fast. So it's usually more common to do in the morning because you fasted overnight naturally. Um, and then we do all these things. We prep it. We do breath work. We do Hape, which is completely optional. We use Hape as a tool to calm you down. And this is an Amazonian snuff that gets shot up your nose. I always preface everything. This is all legal. It's legal. So these aren't things that are going to pop on a drug test. We have professional athletes, Olympic athletes, CrossFitters that all do this. Nothing would be illegal. You can do combo pretty much anywhere in the world. There's some gray areas in Australia where the government's trying to reverse all or really remove any type of alternative medicine, but in general, everywhere it's legal. But then we'll do Hape, and then so Hape again, Amazonian snuff gets shot up your nose, makes you kind of feel like you're on cloud nine. We use it as a tool because of any anxious thoughts or nervousness that's still going on with combo. We really want to make you feel safe and calm.
That was the
So
most uncomfortable part, I would say, is just a little bit nervous going into it, just wondering what it's going to feel like and how long it's going to last, and just all the unknown was really the most uncomfortable part for me.
yeah, and there's a lot of buildup because of the unknown, which is completely common. I mean, it's really rare to find someone who isn't nervous. Most people are so nervous, and it's a huge tell. People Combo is seen as such an extreme thing that people come to do it out of disparity. They're like, I've tried everything. This scares the heck out of me, but I'm so desperate, I'll try it. And again, I think that's where we come in a good aspect because we're really gentle with it. I'm not here to make it so extreme. But what you do after that, so the Hape, we do some breath work. It's just basic box breathing to calm down the central nervous system. As I always say, the breath is the remote to the brain. So exactly how we breathe tells our body how to respond. So if you can do a consistent box breath, it's telling your central nervous system there's consistency going on to help you calm down. If that doesn't work for people, that's when we do the Hape. And again, it's basically the snuff or powder gets shot up your nose, goes into your membrane and your blood, and just kind of relaxes you and calms you down. So after that, that's when you drink water. And most people, like for me, that's the worst part of combo is everyone's stomach's a little different, but you want to drink anywhere from a liter, no more than 2 liters of water is even needed. There's no reason to drink more than 2 liters. And then as soon as you get that, I mean, that's really uncomfortable because you want to drink that amount within
Yeah,
about
it was a
5
lot of
or 10
water.
minutes. Yeah, and you want it fresh in your stomach so you're not absorbing it all the way. So it's an uncomfortable part to be chugging that much water. But with combo, it's going to be your best friend afterwards. So it's definitely like a fine line of like drinking to the point where you want to almost throw up. But that's where the dangers come in with combo. If you guys, anyone listens to this and then they Google or YouTube any dangers or what's going on, is it comes with It's usually always the water. Now, as many ceremonies as we've done, we've never even had a hiccup. Also, nor would I ever expect to have a hiccup or a concern or a safety issue, because the way we do it is completely safe. I'm properly, extensively trained with Kambo, so I would never put anyone in a situation where there's dangers. That being said, there are people, Micah, you probably drink a liter and a half, 2 liters, no liter, more than 2 liters, but you have people that are drinking a gallon, and then they're not like, or even more than a gallon. And that's where you get like hyponatremia concerns, because they'll purge or they won't purge during Kambo. So then someone tells them to keep drinking more and they still don't purge. And now they have a liter and a half, sometimes a gallon and a half, or even 2 gallons of water consumed, and they never purge it up. And then they can get hyponatremia. So that's where like the most common danger is with Kambo. But like, if you work with a trained practitioner, it's not going to happen. Like, they're fully aware of that. And it's just not something like, 2 liters, no reason. It's uncomfortable. That does not put you in a danger of hyponatremia at all.
Yeah.
So you drink the water. As soon as you get to that point, that's when we, topically put the Kambo on you. It takes me about 5 or 10 seconds to put it on. And that's when you get to experience Kambo, which is, for you, it hits you really fast. Whether it's usually within the first minute, the heart rate starts to go up. And this happens on a physiological level. The heart rate goes up because you have certain peptides that are very beneficial for high blood pressure. So they lower your blood pressure acutely, but it's also a long-term benefit. But when you drop your blood pressure so much, your heart rate, and counter that, raises really high, So you got to know where you get this really high heart rate, 120, 130 pretty quickly. Like if you just took off on a sprint, basically, it's whoa.
It was pretty extreme.
Yeah. And then it's like you're in a sauna. So you get really hot, you get red like a niacin flush. These are very specific peptides that your body's interacting with. You feel your heartbeat in your ears. You can feel some pressure going on your head. None of that hurts. I always tell people it doesn't hurt. It's just sensations you feel. And then you have the vasodilation peptides are doing their thing, and then you get vasoconstriction, you get smooth muscle contraction peptide, and it's used when the nausea comes in. So you go from being really, really red like the sunburn to pale green, and that's usually when you start purging. But as much also, like, a lot happens. And that's one place where I want people to feel really safe, because I could sit here all day and tell you how safe Kambo is. But until you're in that moment when all of a sudden you're drinking water, you're a little uncomfortable and your heart rate flies up and you're hot and you're sweating or you're freezing and your fingers go numb or start tingling, your lips tingle, you start to kind of, anxiety can rise from that. So I'm always very, very aware of people that I always tell them, it's like, if you want to voice every expression you're feeling, please do. Because again, I can tell you it's safe until you're in that moment when you're like, everything's getting thrown at you. That's pretty intense, safety, can become a thing where you're like, is this normal? Am I safe? So I over explain everything during a Kambo like orientation so that they have nothing left that could possibly happen. It's like, I try to let them know every possibility. So nothing blindsides them.
I mean, I had a really good experience with it. Overall,
you did.
I think just in terms
of, you handled it well. Because I would really say, because of how well you've gotten with the discomfort of ice tanks, like that for sure has a lot to do with you and your ability to lean into discomfort. Because a lot of people,
physical training, exercise, the same thing. It's like, how long can you stay on? I mean, they used to say for like winning the competitions is who's willing to get the most uncomfortable, or like who's willing to hurt the most. And I know you've done 100-milers, so that's kind of true.
Yeah, but with Kambo, it can be so uncomfortable, and sometimes that's what makes it is so worse, is because it's a non-psychoactive, so you are 100% mentally and physically capable and control of your body. So when you're in that discomfort, you have nowhere to go. It's not like you can zone out or move on to something else. Like, you are faced with all that discomfort, and that's what tends to make people say like, oh, it's the worst thing ever. Because it really depends on what level of like health you're at, because then it will help because how brutal it is for Lyme disease and people with those issues. It can be very brutal because it's so effective. It's like a war zone going on in your body when you have a really powerful antibacterial kick into someone who has like active Lyme symptoms. And it's going to be pretty brutal for them compared to like an athlete. We do it like the Olympic athletes here do it strategically before a competition because it makes them feel so good after. Like they get so much energy. There's all this mood enhancement. There's dopamine, serotonin regulating peptides. Like they're like, all right, let's do this. And it builds their confidence, but it creates their laser focus ability. So there are a few people that are like, oh, I'm just jonesing for a combo session. And that's not common for sure. I guarantee you. But there are like, there's that where people do it just because of how good they feel. And then some people that they don't have that luxury. And it's just like, let me be down for the count for a day, but they'll feel amazing after. You always will feel better, but you just go through a detox. You can go through a detox. It's pretty heavy. So yeah.
But like, I just have a fascination with therapeutics that have discomfort involved. I think just between exercise, ice baths, saunas, those kinds of things, it's just made me more aware that there's like a lot of things out there that you have to pay the price to get to. And so those therapies have just really intrigued me.
Yeah. And we definitely see that with people where it's like, it can be, again, not something I have just no interest in making it more intense than it needs to be for anyone. But there are definitely scenarios where people can feel like they're at death's door. And that's usually from, again, it doesn't make it right or wrong. It's just that I have no interest in doing that. But like, if I was to give you 10 dots instead of, that many,
Oh,
like
I'm
it would be a
sure it can
completely
get way
different
worse.
experience. You would
Yeah.
white out, you would black out, you would have so much cramping. And there might be a benefit after, but also like I'm very much into that like ratio of where's the discomfort to benefits, and if you're
Yeah.
a very healthy person, you don't need to do it. I once did in a training, I did 25 dots, and it's just was the most unnecessary thing. And I remember having it on me. And I remember I thought I said it in my head, but I said out loud, I go, this is a bad idea. And I remember like I thought I said it in my head, and it was just such a different experience. But I don't think the discomfort was worth the benefits in that scenario. And that's why it's like for me, it's let's figure this out. I don't want to, if you get too much, it's the same thing where I believe, and I've done this through all my training and with all my competition was like, I was always told, and I've always held on to this, is like if you work out too hard, so hard that you can't work out the next day, it was ineffective. Like
Yeah.
it was too much.
All of those therapies have that same dose response that you do too much.
Yeah.
It's just tearing down, it's not building.
Yeah, so that's kind of where I keep very mindful on that. It's like if you're down for the count for the next few days, was it worth it? And there's a lot of variables with that. If we're traveling, I only see you once, then maybe you can get a heavier dose. But if I'm going to be seeing you in the future, then it's just not. Again, this is very opinion to me, but it's like I just don't see it worth it. Like we do so many, and we see just the most amazing benefits. And I'm never giving heavy dosages. I don't agree. I don't believe that they're necessary. But again, that's completely opinion. That's from our own experience. I have no interest in giving you 10 dots just to make you suffer. And you know, I just don't see there being that significant of a like benefit. Like your body, they're bioactive peptides, and from what we see, they last in your body for months. That's the anti-inflammatory, the pain, killing parasites for months in your system. The combo experience itself is acute, right? It's 15 to 30 minutes. It just depends. Some people 45 minutes. That's your decision. How I allow it to be your decision when it comes off. We just see that when we did the testing with the brain, it was 15 minutes, which is pretty short. Some people are like, oh, you need to keep it on for an hour. But the 15 minutes, that was the Brain Institute brain scans, 15 minutes for the peptides for 4 months benefit. So I'm good with that. Like, I think 15 minutes is great. I'd say try to keep it on for at least 15 minutes if you want to see the benefits that we have data for. But if you do it, all the tribes in the Amazon can do it very differently. Some don't drink water, some drink a very like yucca water or yucca juice, basically.
Yeah.
Some drink regular water. But that, like, people argue why we drink water here in the United States and how it's untraditional. But it's also the tribes would, but they don't have clean water. It's like it just depends on how you do it. So there's different ways to do combo. You can do it dry, which I'm not a fan of doing without water because then you're dry heaving and that's super uncomfortable. But some tribes, they'll put combo on you and you literally keep it on until it naturally falls off, which could be 6 hours. And by the time it's not doing anything, like you're not feeling it, but they put it on you and until it falls off naturally, you have to keep it on you. So there's just
Wow.
different methods. There's really, I don't think there's any right or wrong. I stick to what I'm comfortable with and what we see the benefits that we know work.
So you did 4 dots on me last time. Is that like if I do it again with you, the dose that you would continue?
Yeah, so I'd work with the combo we have is very potent. Very lucky to get the sourcing that I have from a direct person of the Motsi tribe that goes and harvests themselves, and they're going up higher in the tree to get these that are so concentrated that because they don't really ever see predators, so they don't sweat out, so they're very concentrated. So in general training, they'll tell you that you have a peptide tolerance. So like the general place, and I would expect this with most practitioners, is if we did 4 with you, the next time we'd do 6 and then 8 and then 10. But the ones we have are so concentrated, I could do 4 on you every time and you'll get the same thing. Now, that doesn't mean we have to stay at 4. We could do like, hey, let's try 5 this time and see. Because again, there's always that we can increase it, but I don't ever want it to be to the point where you're beat up so bad you can't go enjoy the rest of your day with your family, and it's not necessary
Yeah.
as long as you do it. So there are caveats and variables to that, but like I would say 5 or 6 at the most. Um, and that would be your decision. It's like I'm happy to help you and I'll guide you through things, but like at the end of the day, we're all adults and you can make your decision of what you want to do.
No, like I mean hurt myself I've hurt myself enough just trying to push the limit, and I know that, like you said, the reward just isn't there for the risk that you endure. And a lot of times it's just the like really same thing with exercising or ice baths. It's really the consistency. Like jumping in an ice bath for 20 minutes once a month is not going to have as good of an effect as if you do it 90 seconds a day. So it's like
Right.
there's just something there where our body just it's more adaptive, if you're just consistent with it, even if it's at like lower dosages and that kind of thing. And that's better in the long term because then you can recover and go back into it. So
Yeah.
are you coming to Dallas? Because I know I sent that cryocon thing to you. Are you still planning on coming to that?
Yep.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So
I'll be.
I could potentially do it again at the end of this month if we're able to stop by your place, and then in Dallas, are you bringing
Yeah.
Combo there?
I always will. Yeah. Oh, it's easy to bring with me. So the few times, just like the other day when we were in the one time I didn't bring it, someone got food poisoning while we were up on a trip, a friend, and I was like, man, that's the coolest of a combo. If you have food poisoning, you do combo, it's gonna push it all out immediately. I always have it with me just for that because it's like the one time I didn't bring it, uh, that would have helped that guy who had the food poisoning. It pushes it right out, and that's what we see it with too. Like there's this again, there's so many reasons people do combo. One thing I'd like, I think with you, the next time you do it is we would to show you, since you've experienced it on your arm, which is a general place that people do I prefer to do their first sessions, unless they have very specific things. Um, I would I try to do a different location for you. Like it'll be a
Okay.
completely different experience. Like we could do your chakras and then it'd be kind of cool to show you like what's the difference. It's a different experience. And I think it's more not so much a physical as it can be very more like, like, hey, I want to feel like, again, this is where Jill really comes in and knows like, okay, what are some things you want to work on life things. And she could be like, okay, yeah, let's do your heart chakra, let's do your throat chakra, or whatever it be. And we see this all the time. So like we can show like I'll have a bioresonance device. We can show your energy levels prior to bioenergy levels, and then we can do it after. It's really fascinating because it's not like it knows where we put the combo, and it will all of a sudden those areas get triggered as increased energy. So like that would be a cool thing is for you is to do different spots so you can see how they're all different because they are very different.
So if you had to explain chakras to a guy who grew up in between the cornfield and the woods, how would you explain it?
Yeah, they're just like it's like energy pathways. So they kind of go right from your right down the butt, your very part of your back, your spine, and they go all the way up to your head. So you have your root chakra, which is kind of like, and I'm going to misspeak a little bit because this is not where I'm super focused. But root chakra can be like stability, trust, financial comfort type of things. Then you have your sacral, which is about just below your belly button, about 2 inches or so. And then that could be like creativity, art, sexual energy, um, that type of like creativity, imagination stuff where people want to get a lot of work on. A little about 4 inches up to that, you have your solar plexus, which is like self-confidence, again, your self-worth, your voice, um, that confidence and stuff like that. And then you have your heart chakra. Um, and then you will have like your throat. Obviously, people do that for like to get a voice. So if like they're in a relationship or at a job where they don't feel like they're being heard or respected, they'll do that. You have your brow. Um, Combo dot's a little different. So we're not going to do combo on your head. It just goes up on your
Sure.
neck a little higher.
Right.
And then you have your crown. Um, and now there's technically not a combo spot for your crown, but we would do is your ears, which goes into like ocular therapy, which is really cool. We can make combo like do it like a meditative aspect where you have combo on you, you're not as nauseous. And it's like you can do like your volume spot, your mention, and all these little areas. There's a lot of little points on your ears that you can do it for.
Okay.
Tinnitus, TMJ. Um, again, there's just so many reasons though people do combo and the dots, like doing your arm, you're gonna get a lot of benefits. It's really you're not missing out. But like if you have very specific things, the placement of the dots can be really impactful. So like with Dara, she was doing she's doing this really in-depth parasite cleanse. And so we did combo dot for that placement, like to help with the digestive system, her root, her solar plexus, that whole area. And she was saying how like she passed out this massive ropeworm. And we see this
Oh
stuff with
man.
people. Yeah, we see this where people have actually like thrown up balls of worms from
That's
doing it,
nuts.
especially after doing a parasite cleanse, and then they add it's a nice little finisher. If you have any type of autoimmune disease, depression, Lyme, mold, heavy metals, eczema, fertility. These are all things where we see, and the ones I'm mentioning are things that people come out specifically for. I've done a podcast where a couple, they hadn't been able to they were having fertility issues, so they came into the combo. A few months later, they got pregnant. We have like 6 combo babies. So it is something to be mindful of. Like, and what I believe it's doing is because for infertility comes from so many different angles. I don't think combo is like the fix all of everything. But like if a lot of people are having fertility issues because of all the inflammation that's going on in your sexual organs, and since combo is such a powerful anti-inflammatory, I believe that that's where it's helping people with fertility issues a lot.
Hmm.
Otherwise, depression, it is amazing for depression. We utilize it, and this is not something people often do, but we utilize it with drug addiction. We have people who've come here who are heroin addicts of 16 years, fentanyl, meth, alcohol. They'll come and spend a week with us. And that's where Jill's passion comes in because that was kind of stuff that she lived. And it's not just combo, to be clear. We have doctors that we can consult with because it is a heavy thing. But where combo comes really beneficial with addiction is it helps with the withdrawal phase. So similar to like with food poisoning, if you do combo, it literally pushes out through that withdrawal. And sometimes I'm not an expert in this part, and this is so I don't want to misspeak, but it's like a lot of people will jump back into the usage because they can't or don't want to handle the withdrawal. So combo
Hmm.
helps with that significantly. You do combo, and you're not going to be having the sweats and the fever for days on end.
What about like steroid cream withdrawal? Any ideas on that?
Um, I've never experienced that someone's told me at least, but it will get everything out of you. I mean, um, it'll one cool thing just to go with that is like what I always say is like alcohol. Like it pretty much resets your tolerance because it cleanses out all the alcohol and anything in the liver. But I think like with any type of like um steroid cream, it would definitely help get any of the unnecessary effects out of you pretty quickly. And it depends if
Huh.
it's an addiction or not, which does
Well, it's
happen.
not like a mental addiction. Steroid cream withdrawal is like a physical dependence that your body creates by using steroid creams. So my father-in-law is
Yeah,
actually going through steroid cream withdrawal, and it's pretty nasty.
yeah. I actually know some people that have other. I've never. They're family members that have like an actual addiction to it, which is
Really,
because of
like a mental addiction?
yeah. Um,
Huh. I didn't know
you
that it
know
could
what?
create that.
I have a, actually, as I say that, I think I'm a little, you're talking about like for skin issues. I'm talking about actual steroids, like testosterone
Oh,
steroid cream.
anabolics.
So
Yeah.
sorry.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I just realized as soon as you said that, that we're kind of
I
talking about
was
two
like,
different
that's a really
subjects, but
weird thing to get addicted to, but people get addicted to anything. So who am I
you're
to
right. You're right.
who am
I
I to
should
talk?
clarify. That caught in for a second when I was thinking like, that's how I think about steroid creams as I think about that, but no, two different worlds. Never mind.
Yeah.
But yeah,
So yeah, I
really
don't know
helpful
what I
skin
would.
issues. Huge. It's huge for like eczema, psoriasis. We have tons of people who come here and like travel, rosacea, all that. It's that's a huge reason to do it. And then I mean, I'm assuming with like what it will do with the steroid cream is push everything out and kind of start fresh, anyways.
Yeah,
Like it
I'll
would push
definitely
things out.
let him know about it, and maybe he can give it a try because he's been going through like 6 months of just terrible, terrible symptoms of it, and it can last for like years. So it's like it's pretty hardcore what it can do to your body. So yeah, it sounds like next time I come by there, I don't have any issues with this, but more is better is just load me up on the sexual energy part. No, I'm just
Yeah.
kidding.
Overdosed on that.
Yeah, no, I
I'm
don't think
sure
you're
I'm
gonna
sure
be
your
too
wife will love
happy.
that with all the kids already.
No, she's already anyway. But yeah, I'll be interested in trying it out and trying a different spot and seeing what I notice from there. So why do you think it has this kind of like because like it's very physical, right? The whole thing, the whole process, it feels very physical. Why do you think there's such a strong like mental you've done 2200 of them there's and you're saying that there's like a pretty strong mental correlation that's happening too. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, that's a great question, Micah. And I think it comes into two places. One, like let's go back to like the chakras. Like what I would say is like with the energy and the spiritual aspect, there's a few ways to look at this. One is like it, I think you would treat the chakra points like you would acupuncture. So it's kind of like you got your chakra point, you got combo, and it basically just gives you a nice punch and it awakens a lot of like blocked energies, meridian lines. Like that's where like a lot of the mental things can come in. There are peptides that help with the prefrontal cortex and the adrenal area. Like, so it will mood boost you, the dopamine and serotonin on a mental level. But there are, and this is pretty interesting. So, like, the Psychedelic Times wrote an article about Kambo as it's amazing for grief and depression and any type of trauma because it's a forced cathartic. And it basically will, that's one of the big things people do it for is like grief and traumas. And there are these peptides that these are such like smooth muscle contraction peptides. It's almost like you're giving areas like this deep massage in the areas. And I think it helps release traumas and emotions. So the one of the times I did combo for no reason whatsoever, I had just the most relieving or releasing cry. Like I wasn't thinking about anything, but just all these emotions came up. There wasn't, they weren't geared to something, but just all this grief came out. And I was shaking after, I was shivering, but I wasn't cold. Um, and I think it
I
was
was
like
really cold afterward.
yeah, and it's like the
Freezing.
moving the it's kind of like with those the trauma release of things like squeezing things out. So when you go into like mental um again, there is no science, but we see this every time. I always tell people because I feel like Combo is so smart that it looks when it scans your system, which you kind of feel the flush go through you. I believe it's looking for resistance. And if you have, I always tell people this, and again, there's no science, but it happens every time, is if you have like a sexual trauma, combo is going to go right to your sexual reproductive organs and almost and it'll cramp it. Women would say that it could be similar to what it feels like if you have a ovarian cyst first. Like that's what you
Hmm.
feel. And I think it's going in there and squeezing and helping press out any of the physical trauma. Like the emotional trauma may be gone. You may have forgiven someone for whatever's happened, but your body still has that physical trauma and it goes in there, releases it. And we hear a lot like it's pretty much like every time someone, if it, I always tell them, like, if you have a sexual trauma, that's where combo is going to go first. And it does. So it's very smart with that. But again, going back to traumas, like it's really good for physical traumas, emotional traumas because of the release. So I think that's where like another mental benefit comes in. As well as like, I think it's just like, think about the difference. Like, Micah, you eat healthy, you eat clean, you're smooth. Everything
Kind
you
of.
do. No, I mean, so as an example, like, let's say like you're
Yeah,
eating
sure.
perfectly fine, right? And then like you're more intuitive, you're cleansed, you're clear thinking, and then um you might go a few weeks eating just fast food, and like you're gonna clearly know a difference in your body, the way it feels. And Kambo goes through like that, and it cleanses you so much. Like it makes you very intuitive, and it's cleansing your body. So you definitely have this like emotional shift of like cleansingness, your body's clean. Um, it's easier to be healthier because you're so cleansed. Like, and I'm super pro coffee with the right coffee. So I'm not saying this as a jab to coffee, but we had a guy who worked for a coffee company, loved coffee every day. After he did a combo, he made his coffee. And as soon as he put it up to his lips, out of nowhere, his body like rejected it. And he was like, wow, my
What do you
body is
mean?
like telling, like he smelled it and he was like, this is not like attractive to me right now. Like, and it's really
Okay.
interesting.
Like, yeah, he
Um,
was kind of repulsed by it.
Yeah, yeah, and I'm not saying that anyway because I love coffee. I don't think coffee's bad, but like for some reason, and he loves coffee. But when he did combo, like I think it made him more intuitive that coffee probably wasn't helping him or wasn't helping him that day. But that was a big thing for him because he's like addicted to coffee, and he was like, I just want to take it. I made it and did everything. As soon as I put it up to my lip, I got this clear no, like don't put this in your body. So those are like mental things. That's why I'm saying that. I think is like combo makes you very intuitive, makes you very just aware of things. It heightens your senses for sure. Heightens your smell, and that's one reason they do it in the combo. That's why they do it. The combo in the Amazon is for hunting because it allows them to see better at night. They can see like the jaguars up in the trees and the camouflage. They can hear, smell everything a little better. So that's one reason they do it in the
Yeah.
Amazon is for the hunting. So like again, I'm just giving you reasons for like on the mental side where there may not be science behind it, but I think it just cleanses you so much with like a fresh start. Or like Jill always says, you level up. Like combo level, like with combo, you will level up. So
Yeah. So if you could hear yourself saying all this stuff like 15 years ago, like, because obviously there's been a journey for you in getting into, um, I don't like, again, like, I'm a really open person and I'm trying to kind of, I'm kind of in a learning phase, I would say, of like being, um, just more aware of how much I don't know and being like really excited about all that there is in the world to learn and grow in and all those kinds of things. But um, I don't know. We're getting in between like the physical and the metaphysical and like some of those elements. Like, what was your journey like, kind of exploring that more and being comfortable, like saying some of the things you're saying in terms of like releasing trauma and like that kind of stuff? Because like to me, um, it's not a part of my current language. So I'd be interested in learning from you on that a little bit.
yeah, well, going back 15 years ago would be kind of it's definitely a very weird thing to think about. I mean, because even my path was very different because it's kind of silly to see it now, but like I was a competitive athlete all through my whole life. I was very competitive on an elite level, soccer, Olympic development team for soccer, and Texas football, track, like any cross country, long distance. I ran the 100-mile, the 200-mile ultra marathons, and like it's funny to see that stuff now. Is I didn't care about diet, I didn't care about health. Like it took me running a 100-mile race one time, and there being a cryo booth at the end that blasted my hips. That's how I got into all this. Is like I would just if you run 100 miles, you're not going to walk for a few days because everything's so sore and stiff and tight and everything. And at the end of this race, the Western States 100 miler, it's up in Tahoe area in California. At the end, there was a guy that had this like cryo machine, the mobile version, local one, and he blasted my ankles, calves, all the like the leg parts. And I didn't know what it was. All I knew about ice bath, but I hated ice bath. Um, and I could walk the next day, and it was like it opened my eye to like what else is there. And like as silly as that sounds now, like I had no idea. So like I was doing all this stuff at a more elite level, but like I wasn't taking care of myself. I wasn't sleeping. I was eating Taco Bell all the time, like Taco Bell and Mike and Ike's. Like that was my diet, you know?
That's
And
a
I
good
still
diet.
managed, yeah, I still managed to do really well. So I look back now and it's like, I might have been really good at what I did, but I wasn't the best version of myself to what else was capable. Not that I like dwell on that stuff, but it's funny to look back. I'm like, man, I did this and like I didn't take care of myself at all. Like that's crazy to think like what could have been with that. Um, but I've always had like since then it definitely brought into like, working with the people I have and doing the stuff like anything's possible. Going back again where I was 15 years ago, like I wasn't in a place mentally to even understand this stuff, which most people, I think that's where ignorance and pushback of things happen is because I was not in a place mentally to understand it. And so I've learned now to not always push everything away immediately, just kind of like see where we're at and
Yeah. It's a
kind of not
fine
react
line
so
to
fast.
It's a fine line too, because I've had people at conferences like tell me like I'm struggling with something I'm not struggling with at all. And it's like, kind of being more like medical, metaphysical, touchy feely, like they're doing some testing or whatever. And I'm just like, if I tell myself I'm struggling with that, it will be a struggle, right? So it's pretty important, some of those areas you get in. I don't know, it's just such a fine line. Like how do you distinguish reality from like just what you're kind of feeling in the moment?
Yeah. Well, especially with that, where someone tells you something, I always step back on that too, because someone's like, oh, yeah, you're doing this and that. And it's like your mitochondria is so listening to everything you say and your thoughts. So if you start telling yourself you're sick or something's wrong with you, your body is going to make you right. And
Yeah,
I learned that with
placebo,
running.
same thing.
Well, exactly. Yeah. And it's like with running, if I would start to think something hurt, it all of a sudden snowballed and became way worse. So if I had like a pain in my knee coming in to a race, I would literally tell myself out loud, like, I'm doing great, nothing hurt, I'm feeling fine, it's a fantastic day. And like that pain would go away. So like I think like you're saying where like people are telling you things that you're suffering from and you're really not. It's also, you know, uh a lot of this stuff comes from my experience at least, a lot of illnesses and stuff are coming from like suppressed emotions or internal things, not everything. I don't want to like discredit people with not, but it's like mindset is so important. Mindset is so important with what we're going through with health and like telling yourself every day. And like if you're doing a bunch of this stuff, you're telling your body that something's wrong with you too. So like those are where like the fine line comes in of like what am I doing for maintenance? And then what am I doing because I think I'm sick? Because telling your body I'm sick and I have to do this every day tells your body that, and your body's like, okay, I'm sick. I have to do this every day. So
Yeah.
that's kind of like where I try to be very mindful of like, well, what's maintenance? So for example, I'm a huge fan of coffee enemas, ozone enemas, any of those. I love doing them, and I'm a proponent to it. And this was an eye opener to me because the other day, not that I always agree, but this is someone else's perspective. They're like, why do you tell your body you're sick? Every day you do that, you're telling your body something's wrong with you, and you're sticking something up you, and you're telling your body it needs cleansing. I was like, that's an interesting perspective. I don't know if I agree with that one specifically because I see benefits and everyone sees
No,
benefits,
I
I
mean
think, from those, but
it's not all mind. It's not 100% mind. There
correct.
is
Yeah.
clearly some like that's an extreme, I think, to say that there's no physical reality other than like what you tell yourself, and like that's another extreme that just isn't the case.
Yeah, you're right. I mean, and that's where I think the fine line comes where it's like, well, what part of this is the physical or what's not? And, again, that's where I'm not an expert at it. And it's like, okay, I do know if I tell myself every day something's wrong, I will. But like, so for example, like there's things for me where it's maintenance, I'll do it. And it was an interesting perspective though, for someone to say, well, why do you do those every day when you're telling yourself you're sick every day? And it's like, well, because it makes me feel good and they're cleansing and there's benefits to it. But everyone
Boo
has
boo,
different
go away.
perspective.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and that's like where I can appreciate everyone's different perspective because that's that person's experience in their life is, oh, it's truth to them. So at some point it works for them, but it's not truth for me, but it opens me up. And again, that's where I guess I'm bringing that up is because it's like, where I was 15 years ago, I wouldn't even have that understanding um, of any of this. And granted, I was, 15 years ago in my 30s, so 20s and 30s, like my brain was totally not in a place to understand any of this stuff. Still kind of
Yeah.
developing, but like now I've learned to step back and see like what there is, because there's so many crazy things. You think about like what is it like in 2010, Jack Cruz was telling everyone at Paleo Effects about blue light, and people basically laughed and booed him off stage. And
Hmm.
2023, well, 2022 was a huge year for blue light blockers, right? So he was at 12 years down where people were bashing him and kicking him off stage basically, and now it's a big deal. So it's like I always try to see like listen to things that people are saying and be like, well, what part of that is true or could be true?
Yeah. Well, since you brought it up, do you believe in objective truth?
Um, Again, I think it's really like I think you can go with like placebo and stuff too. Like there's a lot of things that are like that we create as truth based off of our own experience and what we want and what we want to have experience. So I mean, I think our mind is very powerful, if that's what you're talking about, like objective truth. Like,
I mean, I guess I was getting a little bit more philosophical there.
oh, above my head of objective truth, I guess, where, and I guess I misspoke. I'm thinking more of subjective truth. So then what do you mean by
Yeah.
objective truth?
I mean, are there truths in the world that, regardless of what you think about it, are reality?
I would say yes. Not that I have the
Yeah. Uh,
philosophical answer back to that, but I think there's things where it's just factual. It's like the sky is blue, but you and I could argue if it's a different color, right? That's where you're
yeah.
going with
I
that.
mean,
Like,
that's maybe we're getting off track into an area that isn't, something
not my forte,
that you've
Micah.
yeah, yeah. To me, it's interesting because postmodernism was really just on a huge rise when I was in like junior high, and then growing up in a family where it's like pretty devout and that kind of thing, and speaking more from a standpoint of everything is right and wrong was kind of an interesting discrepancy because like when I was 12 to 15, there was just so much conversation about, well, like everybody is right. you know Everybody has truth, so like I think I have a little bit more interest in that to a degree. And so some people would say, well, no, the sky is only blue based on your perspective, and somebody else can say it's purple and their perspective is correct too. And it's like, yeah, but that breaks down at some point because you can't say I'm going to walk across this freeway and not get hit by a car and do that 100 times, and one of the times you're going to get hit by a car. Like it's just going to happen.
Correct.
But, yeah. Anyway, yeah, I don't know. I think that's the area I struggle with the most, getting into this field of the unquantifiable, right? Like
Hmm.
because
Yeah.
there's so much of it that like there is an element to it that is true. I think we're getting more into metaphysical stuff that does manifest as a physical reality, right? So we already alluded to that with placebo. So like I was just talking with Dr. Brownstein the other day, and he was saying, I think it was Dr. Brownstein, that so they did um, a study where they on veterans for knee surgeries. On I don't know if this was ethical or not, but on a group of them, they cut them open, they put them under, they did all the things, and didn't actually change anything in the knee for the surgery, and those people had the best results long term, and it was all placebo. And so like there is like
Mm.
the thoughts that we generate about ourselves and about the world obviously have a physical manifestation, but I think where I struggle is just, I don't know, like getting into this space. Like I would never feel comfortable saying like this is going to work with repressed trauma. I don't know what that means, but or repressed emotions. Like I just haven't studied it much, but yeah, it's just it gets to be into a space that I'm just so unfamiliar with and don't know much about, that it's hard for me to understand it, I think.
I would say I think that's completely right. And it's been hard for me because I've always been very sciencey and like this is the whole like woo woo unmeasurable stuff. And that's why I always preface like I much prefer, especially where I'm at with like social media and posting things on there, like I prefer to write content about it where it's like this is the data that proves it. But then I'd also be just completely
But that's where you're more
silly.
comfortable.
Yeah, because I have that to back it if someone wants the proof. Because just like anything on social media, post something, you're gonna have some people that are finding the holes in the facts, which I understand because I can do that to my own self. Like, but it would just be crazy to ignore the things we see. And whether it is from combo or placebo, like as far as again of things where people are like the emotions or suppress emotions. I have felt that. I mean, I'm not a crier at all. Like, and that's always been a big deal for me is like growing up, it was like, man, like my own family member could probably die and I wouldn't cry. Like it was a weird thing for me. I never understood. I could be totally sad, but it wouldn't happen. And like combo was the first time, like just out of nowhere. I wasn't even thinking sad thoughts. I just had this like, I don't know, 15, 20 minutes of crying, like just hysterical, like heavy crying. And like, where did that even come from? Like, I don't know. But I also know I'm really good at suppressing emotions. So like, and again, where'd that come from? Because it wasn't something I love like the concept of placebo and then the spiritual and the emotional release because I don't know. That's a place I don't know. And I'm aware of that, but I see it. And it's like, I wasn't told that I would cry during combo. I wasn't told that I would release emotions during combo, but it all happened. And I see it all the time. Like I see people, we work with people with cancer and it's like, I don't like to create experiences. So, Micah, like when we did it, I kind of gave you a general perspective of what to expect, but I'm not going to tell you this or this could happen because I don't want to create an experience for you. And I think that's what, I don't do that to anyone. And we have people that just all of a sudden just had a gentleman this past week that, I mean, he was crying for 30 minutes. No one else was, just that gentleman with combo on him. And I didn't tell him that like, hey, you might be releasing emotions. But he later said, he's like, man, I had some emotions just come up out of nowhere that so he felt the emotions. I sure don't. Not that I'm aware of at least, unless I'm really that good at suppressing. So
Yeah.
like I don't have the data and it is weird to talk about, but it's like it would just be crazy not to acknowledge it because it
Yeah.
happens. I don't know I can say it happens during combo. Is combo what creates it? That's a whole nother perspective because I'm also a strong believer with all the different plant medicines I've done. I truly believe, and I might be one of the only people that believe this. Like, I think all of that is like with ayahuasca and or any of these, right? I think our brain is already capable of those experiences. I believe that, like, if you do ayahuasca, it opens a door in your brain to let that out. So I think it's not always, this is again, 100% my opinion. I can be totally wrong, but from my experience, it's like, it's not the ayahuasca that comes into our body and creates it. I think the ayahuasca comes in and goes, okay, let's open these doors so you can now experience this. Your brain is capable of all of this. It's just we're here as a vehicle to now let your brain experience what's going on or whatever. And I think that could be very likely with combo too, where it's releasing things where it's opening doors for your body to naturally release things. And maybe that's what's happening. So
Yeah. I mean, and yeah, I would agree. I would say like if you've done over 2,200 of them, you have a lot of experience, then explain what your, observe what your experience is in that regard. And I mean, there's principles too. It's, that's more like a physical thing that stimulates an emotional response, but we know about that in other areas, like just like human connection, genuineness, and listening to people, what that does for people, and those have huge ramifications. And I guess the tie over is just that a big aspect of health is the emotions, and I don't know exactly where to place them in the context of like a physical therapy and how those help it, but yeah, clearly there is a huge ramification there. How would you say? I'm kind of curious about plant. Like, I don't think I'm ever going to do a mind altering drug or medication or anything like that. But how would you say for you, plant medicine has changed your perspective on life? and just like the different things that you've experienced through those. And I'm speaking more outside of like Kambo and that kind of thing now.
Yeah, with plant medicine, it's also very like I I truly do not believe it's for everyone. I know that right now I feel there are a lot of people get out there and do it and they're excited and it changed them and then they go out and go buck wild with it and then they go out and tell everyone else that they need it. It's definitely not for everyone. I mostly have done them as experiential. I and growing up, I guess in my 20s, I did mushrooms like as a recreational thing. I didn't even know that therapeutic existed. Like I didn't know that was a thing. Like, when Jill's like, "Oh yeah, I did this." And I'm like I understand it. So
And then
like
you went out and partied, or?
yeah, I was like, man, 9 grams. That's crazy. I'd only done like 3 grams ever. So with mushrooms or psilocybin style, like their set and setting is so important. Like it's the same thing with people who smoke cannabis. Like cannabis is a very possessive plant that anyone will tell you about this. And like so people who just go and casually, inhale and smoke, like that's a completely different experience than if you were to sit down in a circle, do some breath work, and take an intentional inhale. Your experience with that medicine, because cannabis is a plant medicine. Hape is a plant medicine. They're all plants, and intention is very important. So
I would do
I like
Hape,
to
by the
actually.
way. And
Hmm?
I did tell Kate I would do Hape, by the way. I don't think that's like really mind altering from what I understand,
So
but
you're right. The way
I,
we do it, it's not. But now in the Amazon, they'll give you about 100 times the amount that I gave you, and it will become a psychoactive at that level.
oh, really?
But
Yeah.
they're calling new ceremonies, like NU-NU, and you're doing about 100 times minimum what I gave you. So we use it as a tool to calm you down. They're doing such excessive amounts that it becomes like hallucinogen.
Huh. I
So
did.
again, I believe that all these are tools though. So like I'm not like a casual person where it's like, hey, let's go do ayahuasca. It's like I've done it. I've gone a 2-day ceremony. That's all I've ever done. That's all I needed. I did it for experiential purposes though, not like to experiment, but like to get an experience so I understand what ayahuasca can do. And like I had a totally different, like, Jill writes for like weeks in advance what she wants to get out of it. It's really interesting. And for me, it was just I wanted just to have a good experience with ayahuasca, and same thing with those. And there are people who we see. I have friends that utilize it again for addictions too, like ibogaine. Like that's probably one of the most powerful addiction therapies you can use is like iboga. And it's
What's
illegal,
that?
completely illegal. Iboga it's a plant that's only found in Africa. And it can be basically like I can misspeak a little bit, but I believe it could be like a 5-day experience. And you want to do
Holy.
this and you're doing this in a medical facility though. You're not, you should be. So you can go to Costa Rica. I believe you can do it in some places in Mexico and Canada. We have a friend who has a retreat facility in Costa Rica, and there's a documentary on this called Dose. You can watch where the lady was addicted to like fentanyl and was dead, and like she did ibogaine or iboga, same thing basically. And it rewires your brain, and it's a very different experience because it basically takes you back to being born. So like you can watch this documentary and they're showing, for the first like few hours, that person there, it's a medical setting, you're in a medical bed, you got doctors and everything. Like you can be hooked up to IVs because you're basically in another reality for days. Not always like that's the way this therapy is done in the show. But you start out as like a kid, so they're like playing with their food and they can't talk and they're just you know slurring things, and like they rebuild their body and their brain, and they rewires it so like addiction will go away and it can help with the trauma. So like plant medicine can be super powerful. It's not definitely not for everyone, but like if done in the right setting, um, everything like it can be very life changing for people.
Why do you say it's not for everyone?
Well, for a few reasons with caveats. One being if you're not in a place where you have someone who can prepare you for it and integrate later. I think with all of these, you want to prepare yourself for it. You want to have someone, a coach is not the right word, but like a mentor or someone who can help you prepare, um, mentally, emotionally, physically for it. And then the important part, in my opinion, is the integration afterwards, like having someone to work with you, because you're otherwise, you've seen all this life-changing things, all these hallucinogens that you like didn't know was possible, and they just throw you back into the real world, and you're just like, the things I experienced, I'm not right again. Like you see things
Yeah.
and you hear like that, like all of a sudden you get put back into the normal world, you're just going to be like, what is real and what's not. And I think you need to have, you want to have someone that has proper guidance. And we learned that especially from Jill, because she was all over the place to the point where she was seeing things and she was talking to herself and like had all these different perspectives because it wasn't being done in a way that probably should have been effectively. So you'll see people who do things, especially like Bufo, which is a frog. It's the 5-MeO-DMT. That is, it's Bufo, Bufo. It's from the Sonoran desert toad, and that'll blast you in another dimension. And people do that, and they see things and experience things that are not from this world, but then they're supposed to go back into the regular world. And it's like if they don't have any guidance or preparation and any kind of post integration, I think it can do more harm than good, which I've seen because we work with people on Kambo. Not that Kambo fixes it, but people are like, I'm just not the same. My personality's changed. The things I witnessed, it'd be like us being like aliens coming down to us right now and talking to us. And then we're supposed to go back to our normal life. You're just like, I just saw and experienced things that are not, how am I supposed to ever be normal again? And I think that happens with plant medicine when it's not done, I don't want to say responsibly, but maybe respectfully.
Yeah. Well, and like I think maybe not everybody, but I would think a lot of people have had like a dream that was really like impactful, and you wake up from it and you have that space where you're like, is this real? Almost like kind of going back through and I would imagine it's kind of like that, except 1,000 times more powerful. And I don't know if it's permanent or not, but definitely longer.
Well, it sticks to me. Like my ayahuasca experience 7 months ago sticks to me as if, I could tell you everything that happened in a minute. Like, it's like, it was so fresh still, compared to a dream where I don't remember that as much because it's probably and it's so over, like you're there, but you're not there. And the experiences are there in front of you, like it's happening. So,
do you think people get addicted to the experience of doing like ayahuasca or DMT?
I think they get addicted to the after effects for sure. Like, because once people start to see how good you feel, which is also the serotonin, the endorphins, all the neurotransmitter stuff like happening, you feel so good after ayahuasca, you kind of like the world sparkles, like things are glistening and you're just happy and everything is just brighter for a while. And I think people love that. And I think, it can be abused because it's just another way to disconnect too. So I could see that being a very big possibility where it's like, oh, I want to go back to this happy place for 8 hours. Like, I don't want to, if you want to like dissociate or disconnect for what's really going on and you're not doing it with the right intentions of facing the stuff that you want to face, instead you're doing it to disconnect, like drinking or something. I mean, I know people that have definitely done that, and it's not, at that point, it's not, plant medicine is to be very respected, and facilitating plant medicine. It's one of those things where I'll say it's never a place to fake it till you make it. It's the one place, like it's not something as a facilitator, so like a shaman or someone who's facilitating plant medicine, but it's one of the things where it's never okay to fake it till you make it. You don't want to be like, oh, I don't know what I'm really doing. I want to facilitate, because there's some people have really bad experiences with ayahuasca and psilocybin. If you're not properly trained and you're not fully experienced, and just because you do it a lot doesn't mean it's a safe thing for you to go around and create a space for other people. Because that can happen. You can have really bad experiences with plant medicine based off a facilitator.
Yeah. Why do you think some people have like terrible experiences and others have good ones?
So I've been told, and this really like hit me in a way. I have personally never had a bad experience, and I don't know why I've never really done that. Jill has some pretty intense ones. She gets really bad anxiety during plant medicine because she has a lot of what most of us do, but for her, like a lot of traumas in the past growing up, and like those get presented to her during plant medicine times. Like she basically relives all these things. And I was once told by someone that if you have like a bad experience with mushrooms, you have a bad trip, it's because you are resisting what's coming up, and you're trying to push down, fight whatever emotions you're feeling. Like you're resisting them too much, so it becomes way worse for you, and that's why you
Yeah,
have
so
it.
it's
And
like
I've
a
been around people. Yeah,
surrendering
and also not
process.
that I'm perfect at surrendering. I'm not saying that at all. I mean, I've just been, I say, lucky, because it's not like I have a like an untraumatic past or things that make me sad. Like there's things that make me sad, and when I think about it, but like those for some reason don't come up for me, or they have yet to come up to me. Um, with plant medicine, but also again, I'm not an active participant in plant medicines. It's like the last time I've ever done any type of psilocybin was probably 2 years ago, and it was 7 months ago. So I'm not someone who's actively doing these things. Um, because I also think that's one thing is people do them too soon after each other. There's the integration process with plant medicine needs to be a good amount of time because so
Yeah.
much comes up. It's not something where you just go from weekend to weekend doing it. And like you need probably a good, it's hard to say because Jill the other day told me like sometimes she still processes things from her ayahuasca from like 2 years ago because a memory pops up from her experience and all this stuff floods through and happens and she gets like a lesson from it. And so it's really interesting for her where she's like, oh my gosh, yeah, this happened. I remember my grandma came and told me that this happened at the house and like things that she didn't know, which is pretty crazy that she had like truth told to her, things that happened that she was never made aware of. And then when she brought it up to someone, they're like, yeah, that happened. It's really fast. Like that type of stuff is like things that she did not know existed was told, those messages were given to her. And when she brought it up to someone, they're like, yeah. And she,
Yeah.
So that kind of stuff happens too with plant medicine. I think it unlocked
I've
like
heard that from a number of people.
yeah. Jill, always say like it basically removes the veil of like stuff and like you can talk, and that's one thing with like iboga, people do it because they're like, oh, you can talk to ancestors, and
That
that's why it's
sounds
that the African tribal community does it is like for ancestral stuff, or that's not the right term, they're not ancestral, but like to work and connect with ancestors.
sure. Yeah, I don't know. That stuff is wild. I forget what I was gonna
It is.
say. There was
It just needs
something
to be
on
respected though. It needs to be respected
yeah,
and
that's what I was gonna go
very
on. Is
important.
like because I've been to conferences and stuff, and I think what I see in this space, I shouldn't say a lot, but I've noticed it is like people do it under the guise of being like healthy or enlightened or something like that, and they're totally just doing it recreationally. I mean, I don't know
It's a
about
world of a
like
difference.
yeah, I
It's
mean, and
so
I
different
don't
to do
know,
something recreationally.
yeah, like ketamine or whatever. I don't know how that differs from this stuff. But like I remember I was at the biohacking conference and this guy was like telling me about all the like spiritual aspects of it or something, and then just like does it at this part,
Oh,
just sends it and he's like, do you want some? And I'm like, you're just telling me all this like spiritual like aspect to it and how it's like healthy and like, and then you're totally just tricking yourself that you're doing this not recreationally. Like I don't know, I've seen that at least a few times, and I kind of wonder if there's a lot of people that abuse it like that.
well, I think that just goes to like dissociation, and they're taking one thing to disconnect from what's going on. Because it's like, why do you need to do that at a party? Like, what's the point? Like, where is there growth in it? I don't know. Maybe for that person, but microdosing too, because that became really big in the plant medicine and then the biohacking world combined. And also, it's microdose, and it's like not every microdose amount is the right for every person. And there's so many different. So if you're microdosing psilocybin, like these are things I really truly, again, there's no science, but if you want to go deep into frequencies and vibrations of things, like where did your microdose come from? Did they make it in a shoebox, in the closet, or was it made in the backyard of like a natural occurring moonlight? Like, like all this stuff can affect your experience. Like if you're just popping I remember at POFX, someone brought me some LSD, and they're like, let's microdose LSD. And I was like, well, like, that's a crazy thing to do. But like, it was cool. Like, everyone, that was like in 2018 or something. And it was just like, people are blindly doing it because they're told that it makes your brain sharper. But there's way too many variables of that. It's like, okay, well, like how much do you need, Micah, compared to how much do I need of any plant medicine to stimulate my brain and not go too far? And I remember I tried it. I did. And the Paleo FX I took, they said was a microdose of LSD. And I spent the rest of the day on a crazy anxiety attack because I felt like I was right there on the verge of having a blow. And I've never done LSD as a normal. This is my first time ever doing it, but I felt like I was right there on the verge of like, oh my gosh, I'm about to go into a full experience or not. And like, it was so much anxiety. So like at that point I was taking
That
it
doesn't
like,
sound like a microdose.
no, but
Maybe
everyone
I
else
don't know
did.
what
And
a
they're like, this is
microdose
great.
is. I always assume
Yeah, I mean,
microdose
microdoses
implied
should be,
not psychoactive or
well,
not
that's
highly
what I'm saying.
psychoactive.
Like it is, but like everyone's formulation of a microdose is different. So like there's people who are just like walking around parties or at the biohacking conference and handing out microdoses of lots of different plant medicines. It's like, well, that's kind of irresponsible because you don't know, like, keep bringing her back, but like Jill, for like, she's done 9 grams, but now if she was to, this was a scary thing that happened to us in June. She took what she thought was a microdose from a friend, and it was like, it was like 0.3 of a gram, like such a small amount. And she had a full psilocybin trip for like 10 hours. And like, I'm pretty sure if you took that, you wouldn't feel anything, but it would be the same as if you had taken like 3 or 4 grams. And she took like 0.3, which is nothing. But like that shows you our body sensitivity can be so different. So we were at the beach, and all of a sudden she was like, I can't be here. Something is going on. We took her home, and she laid in bed and journaled for like 10 hours, So
Ugh.
it's kind of like with the microdosing, it's the same thing where people like, oh, it's a cool thing to do. And it can be beneficial for people. But where I see it also helps with people like depression and anxiety too. But like it needs to be done with respect, and it needs to be done with mindfulness. It's not something you just pop. Like I think again, setting is really important, and taking anything with intention will create a fully different experience. Like, why are you taking it? Don't just mindlessly pop it and start working. It's like, do you want creativity? Like, setting
You
is
said
so important.
you said that before Kambo too, is set your intention. Why do you think that? Like, what's the importance of doing that during the therapy?
Same thing, or I think like, again, no science, but it's like if you go into something. So when I do Kambo always on my arm, I do it for physical stuff. But like when people come in and do it's very specific intentions, again, this is crazy, but it's pretty much like I can't think about, it's almost like 100% I don't say success rate, but like accuracy for things. We're like, so one time Jill had these bumps around her eyes. So she wrote a whole intentions on Kambo and cleansing her eyes. And when she did, now, like if you told me, hey, I have these things on my eye, like an eye infection, will Kambo work? I'd be like, well, not really. There's no peptide showing that it worked. And so when Jill did it, she had this like white mucus coming out of her eyes. Like it was so crazy. It's like, that is something I've never seen with Kambo, but like those were her intentions. We had a lady who was a physician's assistant, and she had a botched, we were up in Pennsylvania. I don't always ask people what, unless they want to tell me, I don't ask why they're doing Kambo. And she didn't tell me, so I didn't know, but she had a botched LASIK surgery, and she was having to put eye drops in her eyes every like 15 minutes. And when she went through very serious, and she wrote down all of her intentions, which was to reverse and heal her LASIK surgery. Now, if she had told me that, I would have been like, well, there's really nothing saying that this will work. Like, let's do it for like, we can try, but there's nothing that would tell me, hey, this is going to work for you. And when she was doing Kambo, she kept telling me that she felt like she had glass in her eyes. And it was so confusing because I'd never experienced that before. And she'd been at the beach or something a few weeks back. And my first thought was like, well, maybe there was sand in her eyes, and the pressure that's happening in her eyes are like pushing it out and making it really uncomfortable. And like she was very nervous. She's like, I feel like there's glass in my eyes. This is crazy. And then when we couldn't get anything out of it, it was fine. But when she was done, she was like, I talked to her the next day, and she's like, and I've talked to her weeks after. She never had to use eye lubrication anymore
Wow.
for her eye. And she told me after, she was like, I did this because I wanted to see if it fixed my botched LASIK surgery. And she's like, my eye is moist again. It's not dry. So let's see how this goes. And the last time I ever heard, she doesn't ever have to use it. And like, to me, that's clearly intention. Like, I don't see anything where it's like, oh, the Kambo peptides are going to fix the surgery and all of a sudden, you have natural lubrication in your eyes again based off of this frog secretion. So like that's where it's like intentions can really be powerful, as well as they're just like right there and ready for you to release. And
I
again,
can't.
there's no science, but that's set and setting is very important.
Yeah, I can't remember what the intention that I set because you told me to do that. I think it was humility. I pretty much asked for humility every day, and then probably just to feel really good. Like I don't remember exactly what the intentions that I set were, but um yeah, those were probably them. But yeah, so is there anything I should do differently next time I do combo? Or
I think I like more so when people come into it without anything, because then again,
okay.
it kind of really will reiterate something, if you get like a very well-known result and you're like, yeah, okay, this is it. But I would really love to do like the chakra points. Even we can do like meridian lines and all that. And like we can run you on the bioresonance device beforehand, and it will show you where your chakras are, like, oh, your root's low. Okay, we can put them there, and then do the combo and then run it again later and show that that area got activated. But like, that's something where like you could sit down with Jill and talk with her about like, if there's anything you think that needs improvement, any like life goals. Oh, I have these big business decisions to make, or I have friendships I'm trying to fix, or what, there's a lot of different, whatever it be. And then she'd be able to be like, yeah, let's do these. That's kind of where her specialty is with it, and she likes to do that stuff. And um
It's that's another area I struggle with, and I feel like I can talk about this stuff with you because you're like my heart and my intentions, and so you understand me on that level, and know that it doesn't come from like any place of ill will or not wanting to be accepting. But I think just I do have like a Christian faith, and so going into like I don't know, like I don't on my end understand like am I somehow contradicting what I believe by
right.
participating in something with like chakras and that kind of thing. So
That
like
that's a great thing to talk about, actually. Um, unless I didn't mean to interrupt you though, if you had more to say.
no,
I'm really
that's
sorry. Oh,
essentially it. I was just
okay.
curious if you had
Because
any
we
thoughts
work
or
with that a
not.
lot. First off, Jill and I are Christian. We go to church when we're back here in Florida. We live in the Bible Belt. Like we live in the most intense area where actually we have people, where we live here in the Panhandle of Florida. Like yoga is very considered on like a satanic level, demonic practice. And even though that's not how we view it as like a healthy movement and opening. And but we live in a place that is so like very, very religious. And that's always one thing. I'm pretty sure I would have mentioned it. I always say it, but like, I always say like we open the circle, where we do like open the ceremony, and it's not a religious thing. um it's not a spiritual thing or anything like that when we do the breath work. But like, I don't think anything we do counters or like would bring anything into like God or counter what God is doing. I think all of this stuff, because even like if you're looking at like, there's different terms, like instead of chakras, they might call it something different. Like different religions have
I
different
do notice
names.
that a lot is language
Yeah.
differences between like
Yeah.
me and like Bailey Richardson are a great example. Luke Story's assistant.
Mhm.
And she's a friend, but she'll say things about the vibe or the energy, and I'm like, oh yeah, I just have a different word for that, or whatever,
Yeah. 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 So I don't think we're doing anything, because we have full respect. Like we are religious people. We're like, and this isn't like, again, for me, it's more science. But I don't think anything we're doing is going against any of that. And where we live, again, people are so like, we will come. People come do combo with us all the time, but they won't touch yoga with a 10-foot pole, because they're like, that's like, no, like that is a non-Christian practice to do yoga. And that's where this whole community where we live here is, pretty much. It's like I said, it's very intense, but they'll all do combo. Um, we get that concern a lot, and it's always reiterated. It's like, hey, like we're not doing anything dark. everything is love, everything out of us is good, like good frequencies, and we're here to heal and make people better, not like do anything against, on a religion, or nothing that we're doing is like dark magic, or calling in things that are, not ideal, and love and light. And we get that question a lot, though, more so for the people who are local to us, not people that live outside of where we do, but people are like, well, they have a little concern. And but some of the most religious people I've ever really come across are avid combo clients, basically, where they're like, they see the physical detox they get out of it. Now, they're not the ones that I'm the first person to talk to about chakras. They're more doing the physical cleanse, but those are like, if people are open to that, I will. But again, we see it as chakra. I think that's more of what most people know them as, but different people have different names for them,
Yeah.
for sure.
And I did, so I got some paintings from one of my friend's wives who they live in India, and they just sent it to me as a gift, and she does painting, and they're of, Indian gods and that kind of thing. And they're very beautiful. I loved them. I did reach out to one of the elders at my church, and they're guys that I really trust. I mean, they're very theologically understanding, very genuine people that love God and love people in a way that's just, I think, really unique. Because a lot of the church today has been so commercialized and has lost a lot of what Jesus taught. But anyway, like, I did reach out to them and ask about it, and they said, well, there's, clearly you're not observing those as like a god or an idol or anything like that. But even without that, part of it comes down to what signals are you sending to other people, and some of that. And so I think, I don't know. I think I have to think about it more in terms of like the chakras and understanding that. I think a lot of it comes with my lack of understanding too. And then I have that question internally, is like, is this getting into an area that I shouldn't be getting into, or not? And so, and that's just like an internal question. Like, I'm just being totally transparent with you.
Yeah,
So
no, but I think
don't
what
take
you're
that
saying
as,
is very common, though, Micah. Like like not just with combo, but lots of things where you kind of have this like resistance, or some like turbulence of understanding, or like, is this what I should be doing or not? What's it going against? And like, you're right, though, because it's not even so much like, okay, you may see it differently, but what messages are you sending out? And I think that's really important, and there are definitely people that would be able to answer that better than I would. But, as far as like, with chakra points or activating them, but I bring it to a scientific level. And even if I didn't know
yeah.
what a
What if those
chakra
are a
was,
physical reality? Like, you
yeah,
can't
like
say
I can
it's,
take a bioresonance device that's running, and like, whether you want to call it chakras or just your tailbone, like, you're going to see some activation there. Now, you can leave out everything else. It's like, well, what does that tailbone part of your body do? Is it really root? Is your root really about financial stability or trust and just grounding, or is it just that's where it's like it's pretty fascinating to me, because like, take out that aspect, you still have like, same thing, you do combo here, like energy is still going to increase, but it's kind of interesting to show like where you can integrate it with like your energy points of your body, and like activating them. And where we see people like, oh my gosh, yeah, I finally got to tell, my husband that I wasn't happy with this, and I've been too scared to do that, like doing chakra points. But is that placebo? I don't know, but we do have at least the, measurements to show that area was activated.
yeah. Yeah, and I think it's like an important area for some people to address. And then there's
Very
people
much so.
like probably more where you're at, being in the Bible Belt, which would say like anything that's like, I don't know, it's almost just more cultural, because they'll just like, you're familiar with the term legalistic?
No.
Do we? Okay, so legalism is so in uh why can't I think of the name of the book with John Bunyan, the second most book sold of all time? Anyway, so there's the journey of Christian going from um, the city of destruction to paradise, essentially. And so one of the first things on his Christian journey he comes across is legalism. And so legalism is saying I can reach God through my acts, through
Okay.
doing right or wrong. So if I do all the right things, I'll reach God, and that's clearly no route to God. But I think a lot of people, um, that's a pretty easy thing to fall into, that I've definitely fallen into in the past, is like, um, my religion is about doing right or wrong, and that's how I reach
Mhm.
God, where it's like, no, God is reaching down to us. Like, as it's not the other way around. He's not
Right.
up there, and we're eventually doing so much good that we are on the same playing field with him. But no, it's an act of grace and mercy and all those things. And so, but yeah, I think a lot of people that tend to lean into a legalistic, and it's a fine line, right? Because it's about the matter of the heart. It's not about the behavior of the person so much as
Right.
like what's going on in their heart. So it's not like you can just broadly apply these things. But and you do see that a lot, where it's like, that's wrong, this is right, no matter what. And so I think people take a broad brushstroke on things like yoga or things like Kambo or whatever it might be, because they just see such a black and white space, and it has nothing to do with the heart matter. It's like, well, where did Kambo come from? It came from people in the jungle who practice a different religion than I do. And it's like, yeah, so that it might, but like, there's a lot of things that have come from religion, I don't know. I
Right.
can't think of a good example. But if you were to say, like, just theoretically, if like the invention of cars or planes came from a Hindu religion, that doesn't mean you're not going to use them. And so I think,
Right.
but people don't apply that same logic though to some of these things, because there is more experience involved with them. And I think just the fact that it has like frog secretions or different things in it just puts it into a space that um, you can easily associate it with like a different religion, even though it's not,
Yeah. Oh,
like,
and the
it doesn't
terms, right?
have to
Like we're
be.
talking about chakras and all that. It does make people a little more uncomfortable or questioning. So like how you're bringing that up and it's trying to like read the room, but
I think
um
they're great questions though. Like, I
they
think
are.
that
Well, I get asked
if
that a lot, especially here, because people are like, listen, my concern is I don't want, we get that when people come in, they're like, I'm very religious. So I don't want anything to be inappropriate. And, no one's ever left here. Again, I could see it if I was doing chant or beating drums or like that might be a different experience for someone who's very religious, but this is very I think our combo is very like maybe more tight and clean in a way of like it's more just a protocol, right? Like I'm not wearing head feathers, but there are people, and there's no right or wrong to me. Like if someone wants that experience, they can. But there are, it's like it's the environment and the method we're doing it. But we get lots of people that are like, listen, like I'm very religious, I'm very Christian, and I don't want anything to make me uncomfortable. And I've never had anyone say, hey, this doesn't feel good. It's very
right.
respectful, and it's more, I think, again on the science wise, but very religious people are very constant clientele of combo here, so it is very
Well, and I don't
interesting.
think that's the telltale of like, should you do it or not do it? Because like, people do all sorts of stuff, right? And so you can't
Right.
just calibrate it according to what other people are doing. But the thing I like about like conversations I have with you or Ian is, it's really like, one, I like you guys a lot, and I learn a lot from both of you. But like, it's really like perpetuated just this, it's really deconstructed, I think, a lot of what I assume. And I really like the challenge of my like assumptions that are really very deep, to me, that are like ones that I've carried for
Mhm.
my whole life or just have never even thought to question. And so it's been like really good in that respect, because I feel like it's pushing me to think in the last, especially just the last year, more than I ever have. And I really like that aspect. But yeah, in this context, I like it too, because I think those questions are important, and it's also important to verbalize them, because I think
Very much so.
something I get scared of like verbalizing that kind of stuff, is how, like, will I be shutting down a conversation or a relationship, especially in today's world with people being so like paradigm driven and politicized. So like there was a couple of people today that I was working at a coffee shop and they overheard one of my conversations, and they started talking to me afterwards and were like, hey, and then ask what I do. And rather than saying like natural medicine, because I'm scared that's going to shut down some sort of potential relationship if they're in the paradigm of like, I got my booster today and I feel great, you know, um,
Yeah.
is like I word it in a way. Well, I work with in the space of, I can't remember exactly what I said, but something about like lifestyle, using drugs as like a last ditch effort if needed. And there is a time and a place for those. But a lot of what we do is using things that are outside of the scope, that are non-toxic, that are helpful for people, and wording it in a way that's just a little bit. So I think in the context of faith, though, it's
Neutral.
even more than that. Yeah, that
Mhm.
I just get worried I might potentially dampen conversation and relationship with people. But it's important. And I think once you find relationships that you can have those discussions with and open and freely, without any of that stuff, that's super, super valuable.
Well, I think it's important to have that because, it's the same thing of like, just even that, like, and having a conversation with someone, being able to disagree with them and still be friends. Like, that's hard nowadays for people. It's like, it's one or the other. And if you have a disagreement, it's so powerful to be able to disagree, but still be friends with someone. So it's like, it's a tale sign of something where it's like, if you can, what kind of conversation you can have with someone before they just reject it or close down, and how open they are. And that's one reason, to even step back when we think about Ian, that I appreciate the most about him is he'll never make you like right or wrong, but everything from
Yeah.
him is still very like he can back it up with science, and it's just like,
Yeah.
well, I can change the flavor of your drink. Well, that sounds like voodoo. No, no, no. See, if you just take, if you're pushing out like the vibrations, and if you can center them and actually hit the frequency, you truly change, like for him, and there's nothing you could ever say to him to insult him because like he's so aware of how things work again on a scientific level. And it comes across like, iron can literally change the taste of your drink over a
Yeah.
Zoom call. And it's like,
And
that's,
I experienced that, by the way. Yeah.
yeah. And it's just like, but to him, he's like, yeah, no, it's science. Like, and he gets all excited. He's like, listen, this is how it works. And he doesn't make anyone, he doesn't get offended. But he's able to say it in a way that like you can understand it or at least be comfortable with it in a way of like, it's not witchcraft. It's like, he's literally like, no, listen, I learned this through, doing biochemistry and, with physics and meshing them together and how you create this energy right here and, whatever it be. So anyways, like I always appreciate with Ian, like the conversations that like anyone could have with Ian because he's able, like, I don't know if there's someone better at explaining things than Ian when it comes to like super high tech stuff and he can put it down to like, Winston can almost understand if there's something, it's like,
Sure.
and it's like
Yeah.
that's like one of the best skills you can have in this educational area when you're trying to explain things. Is like he can put it at a level that everyone can
Well,
relate.
I think you and Ian are cut from the same cloth in the regards that there's not like an ego that I'm going to violate. Like, I'm not going to say something that's offensive to you by like asking a question, and maybe I ask it in a way that isn't the best, but like you know my intention, so it doesn't insult you. Whereas like other people that I've talked to, I was talking with somebody last week, and I said something unintentionally. It's like, oh, you don't actually use all that, do you? And not in like a judgmental way, but it sounded like a lot, right? And they're like, what do you mean? And like I could
Right.
tell I like had a little. It wasn't much, but a little bit of abrasiveness happened there because there's an ego that you can offend, and I'm sure there's a way to get to that for most people, but I really like you a lot because you don't really get that way. Like, you're very welcoming and open to just curiosity and kind of me going through and trying to learn from you. So
Well, I think if you can, and no one's perfect at it, but if you can view everything as like a educational opportunity for anyone, and like it's always, I've learned this for sure that like back 2022, I joke about it was literally the year I learned never say never with anything because the things that I clearly said I'd never do, like ended up were like two big things ended up like going on. So it's like the more you can realize that nothing's set in stone, like facts and science can still change. And there's definitely limit growth, which is stuff that I learned from Ian. Like if we like, no, like you're saying before, maybe this is where objective truth comes in. Like, no, the science says this and it's never changing. If we stick to that, there's no ability to grow. If you keep questioning that science, things that change. So like I
Well, it's
use
not the
things,
science, it's your assumption that is
yeah,
being violated. And so it comes down to an
sure.
ego thing ultimately, is like, I'm not willing to be wrong.
I get a lot of people, and maybe this is also where because it doesn't bother me, unless someone goes into like a personal attack. But like with Kambo, on whether it's social media, we did it with the biohackers docu series on YouTube, like millions and millions of views. Like not everyone's going to be sunshine and rainbow comments. Some people are like, this guy's a whack job and he's a white man, all this stuff. And it's like, okay, it's an opportunity to educate or at least clarify some things. Like, so there's really nothing, especially with combo, no one can really affect or say something that like, because I do get a lot of backlash for the amount of publicity and exposure we give to it. There's a lot of people who feel like there should be gatekeepers on who should be allowed to experience it or not, which is insane to me, like because of the amount of time we do it. So I get a lot of backlash. People don't like us. Practitioners don't like that we're,
Yeah.
putting it out there. And it's like, first off, like there's a difference because combo is not what we do for money. Like it is our passion project. So like, there are people for sure, and people do it as their job, so they are charging a lot. But for what we charge, it's literally pays for the medicine and travel. But like, we don't do this at all for money. It's like it's our actual passion project, and it's like
Yeah.
we get out of helping people. So there's no way I'm going to be like, oh, are you sick enough to benefit from combo? Like, and that's what people want us to do. So like, I get it all angles. Where practitioners aren't fans of us, people say we're quacks, and it's like, okay, I don't really get offended, and maybe it's from just one thing. If it's from you, I don't think it's could be offensive anyways. But like when we get it from people we don't know who are just making an easy comment that's snide or something, it's like I notice that I don't get affected by it. Like it's just like, okay, I'll spend some time educating them, and if there's a point where they're just attacking me, then it's like, okay, well this isn't going to go
Yeah.
anywhere. But if they're
Yeah.
asking questions or like they're whatever it be, like I do have my limits, but I'll engage just as like a listen, like I see that's how it might be seen, but like this is how we're seeing it. Um, but I mean, coming from you, that's definitely not like something where you're attacking me. It's like I love questions because it opens up mind, especially on like podcast or interviews, because this is the same things you're asking. Someone could be driving down the road right now asking the same question about like the podcast. Like I'm saying something and they're like, well, this is weird. Why is this religious? So like it's great to cover all angles so that people can have a clear understanding of it. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. What do you think about this podcast format? It's kind of just free flowy, and uh, I don't know if it
I've
will
never
have
been
as
so
high of
comfortable on a
engagement.
podcast. Yeah, like because it's way more casual, and I think people can appreciate that because I always said too, where it's like if I have a phone call with Ian or John Butts from Water or anyone, it's like, man, if this is a podcast, like talk to someone for
Yeah,
3 hours
exactly.
about revitalized water or something, and then it's like, man, that should have been a podcast. Like it's much easier. It's not so back and forth interviewed. Where
Oh man. I
more
know. It's
casual.
like, well, like I said, the best conversations always happen once the recording stops or beforehand. And then we get into this like scripted, automated
It's
interviewer
very
host. And it's like, I don't know. I just want to create a podcast space that's like what one I would want to be on, which is much more like a conversation, like getting to know the person and some of their thoughts and feelings, and like much more than like, so how did you get into combo? Okay, what are the benefits of combo? Isn't combo dangerous? Like going in that, and we did cover all those points, but it was like through natural
yeah.
conversation because like I genuinely want to know about it. And I did know a little bit of that stuff, not all of it, but like I probably knew like 10, 20%. And, for the sake of listeners, I'm cool with like going through that again or whatever. But yeah, to me, it's just a much better form of what I think like a good interview should be, which is just like a open and candid dialogue that's pretty raw and unedited. I just
Well,
find,
yeah, and to be transparent, because everyone who listens to podcasts, if they've never been on a podcast, whether they're hosting or as a guest, they probably don't know this, but you're the first person I believe that has never like sent me a whole list of questions that you're going to ask me. So look, honestly, hilarious. I was assuming we were talking about Kambo, but I didn't know. So like there was no. It was like, hey, let's go on a podcast, and it was like, I'm assuming we're going to talk about Kambo, but I don't know if we're going to be talking about that or cold therapy or biohacking in general, or So I appreciate that because it wasn't going into it what it was about.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's a lot of topics we could have touched on, but you're like my contact guy for Combo, and I am genuinely curious
Yeah,
about it. So, yeah, like the guests that we get on, I decided just like I'm not going to go for like name recognition or something for the sake of it or anything like that, because like I want to have conversations with people like, and I always don't know who I'm genuinely like going to have a good connection with, but I'm going to try my best to find people like we just can have a good conversation and there's free flow and dialogue happening. um so I don't know, like just all the best conversations I've ever had have never been recorded. So that's kind of
yeah,
sad,
I
right?
can definitely. Yeah, I agree with you on that because there's times where like I just spent the weekend with Ian, and it was like the things he was talking about were just like, why don't you just have a crew follow you? Like, and this, so that all the stuff that people hear you say is so like life changing, and so many people could do that. So you're right. Like the best conversations are that way, and some of them are probably not because podcasts can feel too scripted, and like you're not
Yeah.
people don't go off that because there are some people who I know are like some of the smartest people in their field, but they're so in their head they're not capable really of having a casual conversation about it because it's just they're on the level of so much high science that they can't bring it down. So like it wouldn't be like, so when you're saying like you're choosing podcast guests, like some people are the best smartest in their field, but they may not be the best option as a speaker on that topic.
Yeah, and that does happen somewhat, but yeah, I think the scripted thing makes sense. Like if you're trying to get good information in 30 minutes, it kind of makes sense because you can't really get to the meat of something unless you just like boom, 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 give me the information on this topic. But yeah, I have no like expectation on it other than I want it to be a podcast like that I would enjoy to listen to, I would enjoy to be on. And so it's kind of selfish in that respect, but I'm in a place where I can do that. So why not?
Yeah, well, plus I think you have it's a luxury, but like you're considered an expert in your field, so you have people who already respect you. But then you're not having a podcast just about ozone; it's about so many other things that intrigues people. Like whether
Yeah,
I
well,
knew
I'm a
you or
little,
not, like I would be listening to your podcast. Like I've always known who you are, and then know you would be different. But if like I saw that, like, oh, Micah from Simply with Three has a podcast, like heck yeah, I'm gonna listen to that because it's gonna be like different people and cool topics.
yeah. Anyway, this has been a really good one. I do got to get going because I got to do an IV ozone training online.
All right.
But yeah, I really appreciate you jumping on and teaching me a little bit about combo and some of your thoughts behind it. And then plant medicine is pretty cool. We'll probably do some more, do it
Yeah.
again, or maybe we'll do some live ones with a. I would like to try some with like 3 or 4 people when we're like at a conference and see if we can get some good
Oh
dialogue going.
yeah.
I think
Those are
that would be.
cool. Yeah, you can definitely do that.
I think it'd be fun.
Yeah. No, it would. Yeah. There's only a few times I've seen that, and those are some of the best ones too. Like as a group of people,
Shoot. Well, we
for
never
sure.
said if people are listening, like where they can find your stuff, and I'll put it, or Charlene will put it below this as well. But like, how can people connect with you or find your stuff if they're interested?
If you're interested in me and like the other stuff I do, my Instagram is that Todd, and then Kambo. Our company is Modern Kambo, so it's Kambo, of course. And then modernkambo.com is our website, and go on there and see science, and we have all our media if you want to see a docu series that we've done, and there's a lot of science in there that we have as well. And probably those are the two best places to reach out.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate it, Todd. You're a good guy. Really love to have you on, and we'll be talking more.
All right, Micah. Thank you, sir.
Yeah. Take it easy. Bye.